welcome to a special episode of In the City con Christi. As you all know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're focusing on mental health, also physical health this month. Last year, I had a roundtable of incredible students from our community that came to talk about mental health and what it meant to them as the youth and our next generation. So today I have a special episode of our podcast where we're going to be engaging with an incredible group of young individuals from our community. And of course, I have to introduce my co-host. You haven't had the opportunity to see him as a guest on In the City con Christi yet, but that is coming, I promise. We have our school board member for District 5, Danny Espino.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much.
No, my pleasure to have you. So Danny's joining us today as well as a school board member, deals a lot with our youth, just like I did when I was a school board member. And so I said, you know what, you got to come co-host with me because this is an important opportunity for us to hear from our youth in the community so we can create legislation that will benefit them, so that we can bring events that will benefit them. And so this is just a great way to give the youth in our community a voice. And so you got to meet our wonderful panel here. We're going to jump right in to talk about mental health. And I was talking to them a little bit earlier before the cameras turned on that this is just a relaxed opportunity. They're like, this doesn't feel very relaxed, but it's supposed to be a very relaxed conversation about what mental health means to our youth today. We've had a lot of opportunity to talk. We're going to have a lot of experts on our podcast this month talking about mental health and how, as parents, we can do more to understand what our youth is feeling. But what better way to understand that than to hear directly from our youth? So let's hear a little bit about it. What does mental health mean to you guys? Who wants to start?
Well, mental health, what I think is just gathering of how you perceive the world around you and yourself in terms of emotional, psychological, and physiological facets. So that's what I think mental health means for me.
Awesome.
Well, I believe for mental health, there's different aspects. I personally have encountered more in regards to social, because I feel like I've drawn away from my friendships. However, I feel like the psychological and physiological part is really important as well because it has to do with it. So I believe it's really important to talk about that.
Awesome.
I think for me, mental health is definitely keeping up with your social relationships and talking to your parents, all that stuff. And it's also kind of taking time for yourself and being at peace with who you are, and also trying new things to find out more about yourself. If that makes sense.
Okay.
So what I wanted to add is I think mental health is important in the sense of the perfect balance that you have between your family, your friends, your school, and just the goals that you have in general. I think you can't only be just because I have a bunch of friends, I have great mental health. You have to think about yourself, what you want to accomplish in life, and how you're interacting with people, and anything that bothers you can clearly affect your mental health and might not be beneficial for you.
Awesome. School board member?
Absolutely. Well, listen, first and foremost, thank you guys for sharing that, and thank you for your bravery for being here, because frankly, not everybody that's a young person wants to talk about mental health. It's also difficult to talk about it because it sometimes can be a sensitive, emotional, fragile discussion, and to talk about it, you really have to make yourself vulnerable. And so certainly, frankly, I think mental health is the same for all of us, but also different for all of us. Right? I'm a dad. I have 4 boys. The issues they contend with are very different than the issues you guys deal with. The things that they're exposed to on a daily basis, very different from you guys, especially since you're being much older, much more access to technology. And so certainly, I think mental health is a state of mind, how you see yourself and how you see the world. But unfortunately, both of those two things are colored by society, colored by technology, and with the things, people that influence us. So I'd like to know, if it's all right to segue, what do you think technology, social media, social pressure, what does that do to your mental health, especially as teenagers, young adults that are about to go into college very soon?
So I think it's a balance between both negative and positive aspects. I think definitely a lot towards the negative is the social pressure that we have from social media. I feel like a lot of times we find ourselves comparing ourselves to others, seeing that if someone is living a happy life according to what they're posting, that they're doing better than we are. But we have to learn to differentiate that when people are going through things, they're not going to be posting about it in social media. So just what we see online can't be what we think about other people's lives. But then on a positive aspect, I also see social media as a way to improve my mental health, seeing motivational speeches and outreaches by people that I model or that I aspire to be. I feel like it motivates me to accomplish my goals and improves my mental health as well. So it goes both ways.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would just like to add that I definitely agree with everything that she said. I think she said it very well. And I think that social pressure is something that can be like very heavy on like especially people that like do well in school and like have a lot of like social life, right? Because all your friends are looking at exactly what you're doing online, right? And also, I feel like the concept of like a digital footprint that it stays on the web forever and ever is like okay, like if you make one mistake, like everything can go out of the window. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Well, I believe that social media really sets expectations for individuals. I believe that like you see things online and you're like, I want to be like that, and sometimes they're not realistic. Sometimes you push yourself to do that, and if you don't accomplish that, you feel bad about yourself. And the thing is that not everything that you see on social media is the reality. So like you're like, oh, but they have a perfect life. I want to have that. Sometimes that's not manageable. Sometimes that's not something you can accomplish. So I do believe that people should not base what their goals need to be based on social media. Rather, they should focus on themselves and see what actually matches their lifestyle. Because that's not something. Sometimes that's not something that you can really accomplish. Because not everything that's shown there is the reality.
Right.
I think what my fellow peers talked about is very important, and I think it's very valid. Social media does have puts a lot of pressure onto oneself, and it makes it very easy for you to compare yourself to others. But also another thing that is really important is the fact that social media, from a biological standpoint, hardwires your brain into into possibly becoming addicted to it. You know, the reward systems in our brain are really easy to mingle with, and social media makes it so that it constantly feeds you a reward that is accessible and short and easy to get. So that makes it a very effective tool at keeping you in the social media circle, whether it be through short format videos or pictures of others or entertainment, anything towards that makes social media a very dangerous, I would say, weapon by design, as social media corporations obviously want you to keep engaged with the content as they make profit off of that. So that's why I think social media that's what I think is the negative towards social media. But also, of course, there are positives. You get to share on your social circle and you get to experience what other people you get to meet people that you might have never gone to meet before, and you get to make connections and meet people. So
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think it is incredibly impressive that first you could articulate that so well as far as what dangers of social media are and what their objective is. And I think each of you has definitely identified and realized what the negative but the positive impacts of social media. The truth is, it's a reality. It exists in our environment and our society today, and it's a tool that's used in many different aspects, as was very well described. However, I think that many times, and what I've seen in students, and I'd like to hear your opinions, not just from your perspective, but what you've seen in friends, and that's what I want to talk about too, is that we see a higher number of youth and teenagers in depression with anxiety these days, and it's been attributed a lot to that isolation. So I challenge and I say, in the conversation we were having of mental health and what that means, to me, I almost want to say it's a muscle. Okay, it's a muscle. It's something that we need to work on, that you need to constantly, like, it needs to be strong. Your emotional health needs to be strong. You need to be intellectually strong and understand all the factors that play into what creates your mental health. And so I think that those are traits that you have to work on, right? And I think never before we're discussing mental health as we are in this day and age. for the many reasons that we've realized. And obviously COVID, I think, exacerbated that for a lot of people because there was so much isolation.
Absolutely.
And as beings, we're not meant to really be alone, right? We're not meant to be isolated from others, and that's really what happened to so many during COVID. And so now we've also we're experiencing, and as parents, as legislators, we're seeing the negative effects of what is happening in social media. A lot of times it's actually been even compared to gambling, right? Because the dopamine that you get from the scrolling and the sounds and all the likes and all those things are the same reactions your brain experiences when you're gambling. So it's definitely dangerous if it's not utilized for it. So every time I go to school to talk to students, whether it's around career day or whatever it is, because again, it's the reality of what we use. If you're an entrepreneur, you use it to get your brand out, your product out, whatever it is. If socially you use it to connect with people that maybe you don't see as often, it's used in so many positive ways too, right? So I always tell students, I say, make sure you're using social media for you, not let them use them. Not let them use you. You want to make sure you're using it to benefit you, not the other way around. And it's very easy for that to kind of happen and to get lost in that. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your experiences from others. What do you see from others? How do you deal with identifying a friend that you think needs help? How do you ask for help if you feel like you're needing it? And by the way, this doesn't just mean in social media or depression or anything like that. Anxiety, right? The stresses of being able to perform to a certain standard, to keep up grades, to get into a good university. I know some of you are seniors. So how do you deal with those pressures and those anxieties of what's next in my life?
So kind of backing up on what you said about the social media, I think that through life, and especially as high school students, we get put a lot of pressure because we're expected to do great. Since they'd start telling us, work on your GPA, make sure that you're getting good grades, good SAT score to get into a good college. And I feel like people who start to struggle in any part of those steps start thinking that people are going to see me as a failure because I'm not doing what people are telling me I should do. So I think part of mental health and being around a group of friends that identify you as a friend is part of seeing like who you are and noticing changes in your behavior. Me personally, I'm in the Cambridge program, and it's very stressful to deal with loads of testing and just a lot of pressure from the curriculum that we're placed in. So as groups of students, we try to be there for each other, help each other out, and tell them just because you fail a test doesn't mean that you're not going to get into your dream college or that you're not going to be successful. And helping each other out, I think, is definitely something that has helped me on my mental health. I think I haven't suffered as much from depression or anxiety or anything like that, but definitely stress and the pressure to do good has always been something on my shoulder. But definitely having the support of others that you know are going through the same thing, and knowing that if you don't meet the expectations that people have for you, it's okay. And it's okay to fail as long as you keep working for what you want.
Yeah, failure is lessons, right? If we don't fail, we can't learn. And so not that we're pushing people to fail, right? We always want to succeed, but failure is a part of learning and growing. And so I think that first, so long we don't, and again, I think, which goes back to that social media, and I talk about it because it's what we see every day. People don't share failures, but it's such a big part of the growth process. But nobody shares the failures. We only share the good moments, and it's not reality of life. So sharing the failures, I think, we almost have to kind of normalize it again.
So I was gonna say that I think for mental health, something that's very important is just to always have someone to look forward to, right? Whether that be like getting into a good university, something like that that's productive. And I think that once that goal becomes scrolling on social media and you escape your reality by just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, I think you get into a dangerous cycle because you can just pick up your phone and do it, right? You don't have to work to get that entertainment, get your brain pleasure, right? So I think during COVID, everything was on screen. School was a huge change that it was on screen. So it was easy to just be on your phone, on class and everything. And I think that created the students that are in school right now, like us, right? I think we're definitely more addicted to the screens now than before COVID, for sure.
Well, I think it's
No.
what you were saying is that addiction, right? So that scrolling, it's almost it becomes almost an addiction, right? It's like, listen, we're adults.
Right, no.
It happens
we
to
get
me.
Hit, we get hit by it too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that I can tell you, I've seen it a lot of different ways, both as a parent and as a school board member. Because, and I'm seeing it, whether we're talking about young kids or college kids at Miami-Dade College West, where they've had to bring on more mental health counselors than they've ever had before. Certainly, to his point, Santiago's point, the isolation of COVID wasn't just where we were away from our friends. Is that we asked all our kids, including all you, to become office workers overnight. That is, from the environment of being around your friends and being in class, we basically told you from one moment to the next, you know, go work in an office and become an adult overnight. And there was pressure to adapt to a new way to learn, a new modality to learn, away from people. And I'll tell you right now, and this goes for adults that you'll see in college, that not everybody learns the same way. You know, some people need the tactile experience. Some people need that one-on-one with the teacher or the group work. So being alone was very, very challenging. But I think Andres' point is very, very well-founded. And frankly, what concerns me the most about the point you mentioned about the addictive nature about social media is that it's not just social media nowadays. It penetrates down to our youngest, because when I was growing up, when we were growing up, our video games were very different, right? Nintendo and Sega Genesis and everything else. You bought a game, you enjoyed the game, you played it, you moved on. Now, it's intended to keep you locked in and to buy a skin for your character that somebody else has.
Yeah.
And you need to get this reward. And so what's happening is, we really are, Santiago, again, to your point, we really are creating this new cocktail of chemicals in our brain that we cannot sustain in the real world. So after the real world comes in and it's not everything we thought it was going to be, we crash and look for an immediate jump on social media or the video games. And so, you know, to Christi's point, you really have to develop a resilience, almost like a personal strength to the outside world, that you can rely on your friends, you can rely on your family, you can rely on your own things, working out, things that you like to do, to make yourself strong, because if not, I think it'll eat you up.
Yeah, it's that muscle, which is why when I talk about mental health, I call it a muscle. It's
Right.
building that emotional intelligence, and that's the word I couldn't remember. It's building emotional intelligence is part of that mental health component that we've never had to talk about like we talk about now. And it's literally a learned model for what we're experiencing in today's society. And it starts, like Dan said, at our littlest. We both have little kids. I have a 7-year-old. Dan has a tribe. But I have one. But it's hard. It's really hard. And, you know, to him, like, reward is playing on the video game because I have it limited. And that to me is like super scary. For me, like, reward was like, let's go get ice cream. And so I don't know how to bring that back. We're trying by engaging in outdoor activities and, you know, having conversations. Again, he's 7, but I think it's really something that it's a reality that's here that we need to figure out how we improve so that our generation has the tools that they need to be successful in that real world. So you guys wanted to share something?
I wanted to say, technology is technology. Technology is not necessarily good, not necessarily bad. It can be used for either one. And that's really what I think we're seeing with social media. Social media has the potential to bring on your career or to bring on change for your government. You can do so many good things with it, but at the same time, there's so many dangers to social media. So I think that's a problem that we're facing right now. We're just trying to find the right balance of whether or not, like, trying to find the balance of, is it really worth it? And going back to what she said, I totally agree with the fact that failure is not only, I think failure should be celebrated, honestly. If you ask me, I think failure is the single most critical part in a person's development that there can be, and we don't talk about it enough. We have been born into a place that conditions us to think that failure is something that we should stray away from at all times, that failure should be eliminated completely, that failure is failure, and that it is bad, and that it is something that needs to be eliminated. You need to be perfect at all times. And we have been taught that from our schools, where we equate our self-worth to our grades and our performance. and that goes into the real world where we just focus on results. We focus on the end product. We focus on how many mentions did you get, what title did you earn in the position that you're in, what grade did you get, and it's sad.
Yeah.
It's incredibly tragic. Failure is incredibly important, and people should talk about failure more. I cannot remember, like, I can't tell you how many times I've turned out a better person because of the things that I have failed in doing. The reason why I am who I am today is because of the things that I failed to do yesterday. And that's why I have no regrets. If I could go back, I would do it all over again, completely equal. Because if not, then I wouldn't be the same person. I wouldn't have learned the same things that I would have otherwise. Failure is a very important teacher, and people don't use it enough, and people don't talk about it enough, and people stray away from it because they're scared of it. We think of failure as something like, wow, the word itself is something that even I, in the back of my mind, flinch away from. Yeah. Failure, fail. It sounds bad.
Yeah. So here, I'm going to give it to you, and I always say this. So I think that when you talk about failure, there's fear, right? So I equate fear to failure. Failure is fear. They're both the same word to me. Fear is failure, and if you're fearful, if you have failure, you had fear. So I try to always say that you need to try something and you need to work your hardest at it to be able to have success. But if you failed at it, it's a learning opportunity. So did you want to share something, Maxima?
Yeah. Well, when it comes to the initial question, you were talking about anxiety, depression, and, well, we're talking about social media as well and COVID, so there's a connection between those. I personally am a very anxious person, and honestly, in this conversation with you guys, I started looking back to my behavior when I was anxious, and I noticed that a couple days ago, I was really anxious about something. I think a lot about my future as a senior. I think, oh my God, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? What if I pick a college and it's not going to be great? What if it's not the place for me? What if I pick a career and it's not what I want? So I was like, I need to distract myself. And it was late at night. And instead of doing something for me, let's clean my room maybe. No, I was like, maybe I should watch TikTok. I was like, maybe that will distract myself. Maybe I see a funny video. And I'm like, in this conversation is where I realized, because I was like, wait, I'm trying to see the patterns that I myself do when it comes to social media.
Excellent.
So I feel like, honestly, this is a great conversation for self-reflection.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't think I've actually sat down and talked to people about this topic where it comes to think about what I've done in regards to that. So I feel like, well, when it comes to anxiety, I've been working on that because sometimes I do realize, wait, I'm using social media as a way to cope with my anxiety.
What is it really doing for you? What is it actually helping you accomplish?
It's not really
nothing. It's probably creating more anxiety.
And you're wasting time probably.
Yeah, probably an hour went by and you were just still scrolling.
Yes.
We really have to look at it. I mean, so what you're talking about now is and a lot of people do it without even realizing it, is using, and Santiago mentioned this, using social media as a coping mechanism.
Correct.
Right? And so whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, whether it's peer pressures, other kinds of stress, adults go through it, kids go through it. The difference before is that kids did not have a really chemical inducing thing at their disposal. And, because you've heard of kids, they'll turn to drugs or other substance abuse, and oftentimes it's as an outlet because of the mental health issue. But now, whether it's an iPad or a phone, we're triggering just the same kinds of chemical responses, as Andres pointed out, with technology, and we're not really regulating it, and we're not really looking at it from a perspective. And then, as a parent, I'm sure you guys will oftentimes, your parents will say, get off the phone, leave me, why are you taking something away? Why are you punishing me? And the reality is that, and I have, my kids are younger, so it's harder to talk to them about some of these things. They're 10, 9, 5, and 2. So certainly the 10 and 9, a little bit start to talk about it. The 5 and 2, forget about it. But they don't really understand what it's doing to them physically And by that, I mean also mentally.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's super revealing what you just shared, and extremely important. And the fact again that you can identify and then you sat here and said, let me think back. When was the last time? Just shows an incredible amount of emotional intelligence,
Absolutely.
and
Maturity.
I mean it's
Absolutely.
a maturity, which is great. Unfortunately, not everyone has that opportunity, and that's really what we're trying to create. And so that's going to kind of segue me to my next question for you guys is, what is school, the environments you're in, your community, what are they doing to help you create safer opportunities to talk? What can we continue to do to help you in that? And just share with us, like, what more would you like to see that could help you express this, flex that muscle, or build that muscle of mental health? We'll start on this side.
Okay. So to start with all the good things, I want to share the fact that I think what you have done with the mental health counselors, that you have started to expand more on them and making them more readily available, I think it's a super important step, and I think more of that should be implemented into our school, because, well, I think for my school we only have 1 or 2 counselors for about 800 students, but now I'm going to shift into the negatives. The negatives is, well, not necessarily the negatives, but just the neutrals. There's a lot of mental health programs that are attempting to bring into light all these issues and all the things that people go through. For example, you have the Edgenuity mental health awareness program that you have to do, that we are obligated to do. You also have all these posters that are put around the school. You have mental awareness day, and all these things. And while they are bringing attention to the issue, they aren't necessarily resolving it. And I think that's a problem. My generation of people, I think we are very aware of what our issues are. I think we are aware that these issues are present and that they need to be fixed. But the problem then becomes that there aren't really a lot of sources that are talked about that are readily available to actually address them. So we know of these problems, and they're brought into the public light. We're talking about them right now. Mm-hmm. But there's not really a lot of things that are done to help. And I think when you look at it, things such as, I'm going to use the Edgenuity program. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to sit down and listen to these videos of people talking about do this, don't do that, and then you're supposed to answer a question to review the video. I personally, and the majority of the people, don't even listen to the videos. We just put them on in the background and just complete them. And the reality is that even if I sat down and watched these videos, they aren't going to teach me anything, or they aren't going to help me build myself. They might offer me tips and stuff, but the reality is, if you want to be a better version of yourself, you have to break yourself down and build yourself back up.
And they're not building an emotional connection, right? Because
Exactly.
it's just another screen.
Exactly.
Exactly right.
Go back.
Exactly right. I mean, and thank you for bringing that up. Just
Yeah.
because, as a matter of fact, at the school board last month, I believe it was last month, we directed the superintendent to take a look at specifically Edgenuity, as well as all our mental health curriculum, and see, is it really accomplishing the things that we said it was going to do? We're also doing a comprehensive mental health evaluation. Part of the issues is that a lot of the mental health support staff that we have right now was actually being paid for with funds from COVID that are running out. And so we've been telling the administration at the school district, hey, these are now critical components of our schools. And frankly, providing more of that staff, that one-on-one that can help and develop a rapport, is, to me, tremendously much more valuable than another screen that's giving information that, frankly, may not even be resolving an issue. Sometimes it's creating a new issue instead of identifying it, which is why we're looking at Edgenuity. But I appreciate that feedback, because oftentimes that feedback comes to us, it certainly comes to the mayor as well, through the parents. Yeah. Because we don't have, when we're walking to school, we're not, they're surveying kids, what do you think about Edgenuity, what do you think about this? So that's extremely valuable. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you listening to the feedback, and I'm glad that you are made aware that there needs to be more done in terms of one-on-one meetings, and that, because that is the most important.
What about like groups? So one of the things I talked about when I was a school board member and I tried to implement, it was hard, was doing more of this, like groups like this, where we would have, my idea was to have breakout sessions like in school. So on Wellness Wednesdays, instead of like you take 45 minutes of the school day, and with support and with some guidance, you break students out into groups to have like open discussions and conversations about challenges that they may be facing or support that they may need, things like that. And so I think that, what do you guys think about that? That's something that would help.
Okay, I'm gonna give my short thing because I feel like I've talked too much. I don't want to hand it off to my other peers, but I think the logistics of that are probably gonna be less than achievable, because actually breaking down and getting the staff to do that sort of thing, and I don't think it's gonna achieve anything, because again, the people are very fragile when it comes to their emotional ability, and with good reason. That is part of who you are as a person to the very core, and it can be a lot of trauma involved. There can be a lot of harmful, negative thoughts that are very personal, that if they are held up against you, then it can cause really bad emotional damage. So that's why I think the more private the conversation gets, the more easy it's for people to connect and be able to transmit the things that they're going through. And that's my point.
Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. Well said.
Well, I agree with that, but on the other hand, I am a person that's very honest, and a person that really, well, when it comes to people that has gone through the stuff that I've gone through, I like to relate to them.
Relatable.
I like them to feel like they're not alone as well, because sometimes that happens. Like I've had experiences that not a lot of people have had, and since a really early age. And when it comes to that, sometimes you feel a little alone. You're like, wait, but like, how can I find a way to maybe cope with this? And usually people our own age know how to do that, and they put you in like a mindset. So I believe that group sessions will be great.
What I think about the group, maybe it's not for everybody, which I completely agree with. I just think that the relatability to understand you're not alone is, I think
It's
can be
really
helpful.
comforting.
So
well.
There's definitely not a one-size-fits-all model.
Yeah, exactly.
That's for sure.
That's exactly the truth.
There's definitely not one-size-fits-all model. I think that each school, each group, each class needs to kind of find what works for them. But I think it's an excellent opportunity to discuss and have and understand like what your school and your community is doing for you. So I'm gonna pass it this way. I think we're sharing a mic now. Yeah, here we go. It's okay. So again, going off that conversation, what is the school? What is your community doing for you? What more do you want to see? What are your recommendations?
I think kind of going back to what you said about the group sessions, I think that's a great opportunity. It sounds like it would do a lot of good. And I think going back to what he said, that like it should be more individual based. I think obviously you weren't talking about eliminating individual sessions. Right. It's like adding them into the school day, right? And I think that would be really effective, because human connection is the one thing that can help us through mental health issues, right? Yeah. We've seen it a lot, like, oh, if he had one person to support him, he wouldn't have done this, or he wouldn't have done that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like definitely knowing that you have like one person, or at least like a group of people to like help you with what you're struggling with, I think would definitely help.
Awesome.
I definitely think that one of the biggest challenges for implementing a strategy like this is making students feel comfortable. Because if you try to force certain groups into students, I feel like sometimes they won't open up. And it might be difficult to find people who have shared experiences. Some people that go through traumatic things or through periods of extreme depression and anxiety may not be willing to open up about it. And it may be hard to identify them and group them with people that have similar experiences as them. For me personally, I think a connection with someone that you feel comfortable with has always been effective for me. And I think what the school needs to do is promote the involvement of students in groups that aren't exactly related to mental health, but being involved in the school. So for me, being involved in sports, in clubs, you meet people and you become closer to them. And working towards a goal that isn't exactly mental health, you still learn about their background and about their experiences, and you can connect with these people. And especially with teachers as well, I think that many students sometimes don't want to, they get the stereotype that mental health counselors are going to judge them, or that they're not as approachable as you think. So for some students that may not work. I personally find that connections with teachers that you already share classes with, or that you participate in activities with, being able to simply talk to them about your personal life, I think breaking that barrier between a teacher and a student is important, so that we create a more personal approach to each other and you understand the struggles that they're going through.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, 100% agree and think that, first of all, I think that our schools definitely have to reevaluate what we're doing in order to provide an additional support to our mental health. And again, I think that it's different for each age range
But you're absolutely right also about the different circumstances of what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's a very big difference between test anxiety,
Yes.
which is relatable to a lot of people, and very specific trauma. Like, for example, as I'm sure you guys are living day in and day out, this year alone, we've had about 20,000 foreign-born children come into the school district. Some are coming on an airplane and very pleasant. Some of them are coming through the border of the country and have experienced tremendous trauma and are suffering from post-traumatic stress. I know because and this is all the way down to elementary schools. I've visited Sweetwater Elementary, and there was a student there that was having essentially a triggered event. That person couldn't possibly talk about their environment or their feelings in a group, but certainly how but sharing coping mechanisms for test anxiety, that's awesome. That's something that absolutely you can do in a group. And so figuring out how do we get to that blend of individual and group things. And the last thing I will say, though, is that, I have friends of mine. I am not a runner. I'm sorry. I applaud anybody that is a runner. Cross country, whatever it might be. Unfortunately, I just did not learn to like to run when I was growing up. But I know people that will say, I feel better when I jump on a bike for 30 minutes, when I go swimming for 30 minutes to an hour, when I go jogging or running for an hour and a half, and folding that into as a mental health component, as Andresa mentioned, the physical component is incredibly important.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I think that you guys, again, have shared so much valuable information
Absolutely.
for us. I hope that this also helps you guys. I want to just say that not just to you all, but anyone who may be watching us, whether it's another student, whether it's a parent, you're not alone. Anybody who needs help, who just feels maybe uncomfortable, may not even be depression, it may just be anxiety or just not sure what you're feeling, because that's super normal too, is to understand, like, I'm feeling something but I don't know what that is. Some students can't identify it. They're like, I don't know if it's depression, I don't know if it's anxiety, like I don't even know what I'm supposed to be feeling. Totally normal. You're developing and growing and learning, and I'm an adult and sometimes I don't know what I'm feeling. So it's completely normal. It's about being able to talk about it, finding what helps you connect to you, whether it's an exercise or a sport or a club, a support group. I think that that's incredibly important to do. So my message is, no one's alone. We want to provide resources, help, tools, support. That's definitely a goal of mine. I always say, sometimes we're not going to fix the world, but if we could find a little bit better if we could leave it a little better than we found it, I think we did a good job.
Amen.
So is there anything else you guys want to share? And then I want to close by doing something a little bit fun, but anything else that you guys want to share, questions that you may have for us?
I would like to share something.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Let's pass it this way and then we'll go back to you.
Well, it has to do with the topic we were discussing prior. It has to do with high school and like mental health and like counseling and stuff like that. In my personal experience, I've been lucky enough to have the greatest counselor ever. So I believe that forming that relationship with adults is really important, and more if they are qualified to do so, because they really can help you cope with that. Because sometimes students are afraid to reach out to them, and I mean, right now I'm mentioning this because I would like to let them know that it's totally fine to reach out, and you don't know how much they can help. And I mean, a counselor is great for that. I mean, I talk to my counselor really often, and if I have any problem, after I talk to her, I feel so much better. And I feel like that's something people should do more often, because I find friends that are struggling and they're like, no, but like I'm afraid what happens if like what I'm feeling is not worthy of like counseling or something. I'm like, no, if people feel things differently, what can be really small for you can be really big for me, and vice versa. So I believe that students as a whole should go more to counseling and reach out more to adults, because I'm really sure that they care about how you're feeling. And that's something that in my school, with every adult that I've spoken to, every teacher, every counselor, director, I've felt that connection, and I feel that any problem that I have, they're really there for me. So if you feel like you have an adult at school that can be helpful and that you feel like you can talk to, but you're afraid, I trust me, you should go. And they would give you a really great advice because I'm pretty sure they've experienced that prior with other students.
Awesome.
That's all.
Thank you, Maxima. And I know that over here is another.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight the point that he said before about getting outside and like running and biking, all that stuff. I think definitely like doing physical activity, especially outside in the sun. I mean, we have like Doral is beautiful, a bunch of parks and everything. Definitely like doing physical activity can definitely like take stress off you and give you like a little break for a second. That's actually healthy compared to like the mindless scrolling through social media.
Yeah.
So yeah, just to highlight that, definitely going outside is a good thing for your mental health for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. Andres, yes.
Well, first, I wanted to thank you guys for doing this.
Thank you.
I'm not very familiar with all like local governments, but I'm very confident in my local government, and I'm very thankful that you're getting involved into the community. You're integrating yourselves into the community. You're actually listening, and that's something we need a lot more of.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate it. It feels human, and that's something we really need. But also, I wanted to go back to what you said, Maximo said. If you need help, there's someone out there for you that's willing to hear you, and please talk to them, because people do care for you. People care so much, and it may not feel like it. It may not feel like there's a lot going for you, but truly, I am sure that anyone that's listening to this message that needs the help, there's someone out there who is willing to give it to them for you to become a better person. So please do.
Thank you. That was great. You want to share something, Steph?
So going a bit back to what Santiago said, I think that going back to the social media problem, I think personally me during COVID, I think that we could all be laying in our room looking at social media, but the important thing is that we were doing it alone. And we were scrolling through, seeing that possibly our friends were the ones going out, having fun, but that doesn't necessarily have to be what's good for your mental health. It can simply be going out, spending time on your own, spending time with your parents, going and getting involved in your school. And I think that's why COVID, personally hit me very hard and was a time where I suffered the most from mental health. Because to me, going back to what I said, it's more of the balance of everything. And to me, it was not what social media says, that it's about just being successful and going out every day with a bunch of friends. No, it's actually going, speaking to a teacher about your problems, being able to go out with your parents, spending quality family time, or just you simply spending time yourself. And I think that's what's necessary to be promoting through social media, that it's not about your social life in the stereotyped way, but instead of the valuable time that you spent with people who actually care about you and want to make sure you spend your time well.
Thank you.
That was incredibly well said, and I'll just speak for myself, and certainly what we've done on the school district is from the beginning of the school year, even when we started talking about looking at how there's math and readings performing, we said we have to keep in mind that there is a COVID bubble that affected people's grades and affected people's well-being mentally and physically. Like I said, we're looking comprehensively at mental health curriculum, Edgenuity, all the software, making sure that we're complying with the law, but also making sure that it's doing something. And we also, we are fortunate right now to have somebody on our school board that is a mental health, that is a guidance counselor, a school counselor, that is an expert in school psychology. And we are blessed to have Maria Blanco on the board, because she speaks with such authority and such understanding that she would have recognized everything that you're saying and been here to echo it for us. And then as parents, we, for the first time in a long time, we have a lot of parental voice on the school board. That is, we are living this, with you guys, with kids a little bit younger. I mean, I know that a couple of my members have kids that are a little bit older than you, a little bit younger than you. My kids are certainly younger than you, but I can see how it's going to get there. So we are there with you, and we appreciate everything you guys are doing to give this a little bit more light.
Yeah. Thank you guys very much. We're going to end with a quick round of words, which basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to say a word, and you're going to tell me the first thing that comes to mind. Sounds good? Okay, we're going to start on this side. Okay, so get the mic. Social media. First word that comes to mind.
Perfect balance.
Okay. School.
Grades.
Okay. No, you're up too.
Okay.
No, you're up too.
Okay. Let's do it.
Parenting.
Difficult.
Friends.
Fun.
Happiness.
Not to be found yet.
Not to be found yet. Okay. Awesome. All right. Very revealing. Thank you all very much for being a part of my podcast experiment here with another incredible roundtable. I really hope you all took something from it. Please know that I'm always here if you guys need anything to reach out. We want to do more things in our community that support you all. We have a youth advisory board now that we brought back. I started when I was a councilwoman. It got taken away for a little bit, brought it back. So I really would love for you guys to engage and be a part of that. I think that that's so important for our development as a community and really shaping the community for the next generation. So we invite you to participate. We have our Youth in Action as well, which is for volunteering and things like that. So you can get all the information through our office. And once again, thank you for participating. Thank you all very much for joining us for this special episode of In the City con Christi. We are going to be focusing on mental health, physical health this month. So join us. We have incredible speakers. They'll be a part of this podcast from nutrition to parenting for our younger generation as well. And we have a pediatrician coming on this month too. So make sure you tune in to all the podcasts within the City con Christi. If you have any recommendations for what you want to see on our podcasts, please email me at mayor@cityofdoral.com. Once again, thanks for joining us, where you get to meet and learn a little bit more about all the incredible people that live, work, learn, and play in the City of Doral. Thank you.
So much.